New week, new Reddit questions, and new glasses. You like them? All right, let's begin. Discussion time. What are some commonly held beliefs about Overwatch that used to be true but no longer are but are still believed in? Inspired by my last game, just now, I was playing Winston where the enemy Reaper soft flamed me after losing, saying Winston effing brain dead. And I couldn't tell if they were saying it because they thought I was terrible. I don't think so because we won, or because they swapped to Reaper to counter me and couldn't land one kill on me. I checked. I was reminded once again about how Reaper used to hard counter Winston back in the Overwatch 1 days, and that now he doesn't even bother me that much on Winston as long as I manage my cooldowns and keep my distance when low on health. I can handle Reaper just fine, and yet I keep seeing the Reaper swap when I'm doing well on Winston, and I get like in this game where I see them pour cooldowns into me just for me to jump away. I understand other Winston mains are feeling much the same. Less talked about is that the armor changes have made Reaper much less effective when facing Winston at full health, and with jump pack on a 5-second cooldown, the monkey will often get away before you get to the sweet money damage. So what other common beliefs are there that used to be true but are no longer true, and what do we need to rethink or relearn? On the topic of tanks and counters, I think the age-old myth that I always answer in these Overwatch Reddit University questions is the Zarya counters D.Va and D.Va counters Winston and Winston counters Zarya. I think in that common triangle that people like to bring up every single week on this Reddit, the Winston pretty good against the Zarya matchup. That part's true, but the other two not so much anymore. Zarya doesn't do that well against D.Va just because the beam can go through Matrix. D.Va can control when to boost her and generate space, like distance between the two targets, and you can control where you want to play. Don't face tank the high energy Zarya. You have the choice to because you have a 3.5-second booster. D.Va doesn't counter Winston now in that matchup as well because of the headshot changes and the way the pellets work against armor on Winston, and then Winston doing true damage or is unaffected offensively against armor on D.Va. So like that matchup's pretty even. But yeah, those are some of the ones that I can think of. Speaking about Zarya, probably shooting the Zarya bubble. A lot of people say, oh, don't shoot the bubble, don't give her energy. The opposite is usually true, where you actually want to burst down the bubble because a lot of Zaryas will bubble aggressively and it'll put themselves in a bad position if it gets accidentally popped really quickly. So you can shoot the bubble as long as everyone's doing it. Another one I can think of is probably that we need a shield or we need a main healer. You can certainly win Overwatch games without those things, mostly the shield part. The main healing where people are requesting like, you know, a Moira, an Ana, a BAP, that's not necessarily true. You can win with Zen Brig, Mercy Zen. Not as common anymore, but it's certainly still doable as long as you play the comp correctly. So you don't necessarily need main heals. If you know you're a low resource sort of team, you should play heroes that don't require a lot of resources, like Wrecking Ball, who can obviously roll the health packs, or Sombra, who can jump the health packs, and Tracer, who can blink around the map and go for health packs. And yeah, those are a couple I could think of. Am I crazy, or is Lifeweaver an almost unwinnable support pairing with Winston? After hundreds of games with Winston, I've come to the conclusion that Lifeweaver just almost literally never works as a winning support duo unless your team is just straight up better, in which case the game would have been even easier and more dominant with a better support. Lifeweaver offers nearly zero help with damage or kill confirmation, which are both Winston's main shortfalls, usually in being unable to finish targets who are being healed. Games where I have a Lucio, Moira, Juno looking to play off my leaps are the easiest games. His healing at 55 HP per second is actually horrible compared to other supports. On Winston, I don't really care that much about a constant health trickle. It doesn't do much to help me stay in longer on a dive. If I'm holding a corner, I want the high HPS to sustain my position, but if I'm diving a target, I'm not actually looking for heals during that time. I'm using my health pool to make a play and looking to get burst back to full health quickly once I leap back. His tree once again offers zero help with damage or kill confirmation. A sad 90 HP heal every 1.75 seconds is almost literally unnoticeable. I disagree with that. And it's rare that it ever helps us to counter an aggressive enemy play being made compared to something like Orbital Ray or Coalescence, which the heal is 100 or 140 HPS, while also increasing our team's damage output significantly so that we can overwhelm the enemy healing capacity and get kills. Most teams that give Winston a hard match will also be able to murder the tree in about 2 seconds. Things like Reaper, Torb, Bastion, Echo, D.Va, Mauga, Hog, Bap, etc. The single biggest benefit you can ever give your Winston tank is extra reliable damage, and almost any amount of it is often enough to push through healing threshold and get kills. Lifeweaver just can never do that. Even more frustrating, Lifeweaver is surprisingly decent against Winston. He's hard to dive, he easily delivers the 80 HP or grips anybody being dove. Tree ult is quick to charge, instantly shuts down any kill. You contradict yourself here. Shuts down any kills and platforms and makes it almost impossible to actually get onto any target without burning. Leap first plus thorns make him one of the highest DPS supports to help clear bubbles fast. I love how you contradict yourself. It says the tree shuts down any of your kills, but then you also wrote that the 90 HP heal on the tree is unnoticeable. So I think you kind of a little lost here. I will say I agree with you on your offensive assessment of Lifeweaver. Obviously it's in his nature. He has high DPS against stationary targets like clearing bubbles, Sigma shields, and anything that isn't fast moving, of course, with the Thorn DPS. But that being said, he doesn't have the burst damage and the proactivity that a Winston is probably looking for, which is, I wouldn't say an unwinnable support pairing, but you're kind of on the ball where like the synergy isn't quite there compared to an offensive proactive ultimate. Proactive ultimates are Ana's nano boost and makes Winston, you know, tankier, and it gives him that big DPS increase. BAP window doesn't necessarily help Winston, but the BAP window can help BAP shoot the same target that Winston's diving to, or at least get that double pump heal as really quickly as needed, or the 2x healing. Ilaria ultimate can like tag somebody and you can pop it as Winston. Kiriko Kitsune obviously makes Winston's, you know, cannon trickle a lot faster, does more DPS. So what you're thinking of is like proactive ultimates like that, which are in fact great with Winston, which is why Winston pairs really well with Ana or with Kiriko and whatnot. But then Lifeweaver is a defensive oriented reactive support where you react to things coming in, not a proactive get kills thing. And you're not wrong to climb in solo queue. I always suggest people to play proactive playmaking heroes, which is why those heroes tend to climb faster, because the agency in the ball is in their court compared to kind of just waiting and seeing what happens. You can certainly win, you know, with heroes like Lifeweaver, like Mercy, but these two heroes traditionally, they could be close to 50% win rate. Even if you're really good, it's hard to like turn the tide and be that game winning factor, that X factor. So you kind of stabilize around that mid range without like, you know, if you're like really high skilled and you're proactive, you can win faster on those other heroes that are a little higher ceiling in that capacity, right? Lifeweaver, you have to wait for somebody to be in trouble before you grip them out. You have to wait to Tree of Life when they come to you versus, you know, the opposite where you can just go and, you know, make the plays yourself. So you're not crazy, but you know, I will somewhat agree with you, but also at the same time, Lifeweaver does have his niche and his place, and he's pretty strong if people aren't coordinated and Lifeweaver pockets somebody, and it can be frustrating for the enemy team. If you pair Lifeweaver with a very proactive support, you'll probably find more success. But if you're locking in Lifeweaver Mercy in the backline, I'm sure none of you guys will die because you're super defensive and tanky, but like you may struggle to find that game-winning play. You kind of just win by war of attrition, which can work in some cases, but you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to get at? Maybe I'm just kind of rambling a little too much. What should trigger my instinct to use Junkrat Queen's Shout? I'm really enjoying Junkrat Queen, and I find the bleed healing mechanic to really facilitate my playstyle, but I find that I'm not sure when I should be using Shout to get the most utility. My main uses are rolling out a spawn, chasing a squishy if they try to escape, or the start of a 2v1. Not sure if I should be doing this. I've been reading that it shouldn't be used to start engagements. No, I disagree. But I find that when I try to use it mid-fight, I'm triggering it shortly before either I or my enemy team dies. Okay, let's break this down. Rolling out a spawn is okay in most cases. Maybe some control maps or like early attacking phases, like at the beginning of King's Row, I would not use it at a spawn for that speed. And then Flashpoint, you have that free speed boost at a spawn anyways now, so I wouldn't use it there. If you think your shout can come off cooldown before like you guys begin clashing, then sure, you can shout at a spawn. But like if you're attacking King's Row, if you shout, by the time you make it to that choke, you have to wait like an extra like 10 seconds because it's a pretty short distance towards the choke. So that's a map by map assessment. So that's number one. Number two, chasing a squishy is fine if you need the speed boost, but that's okay. But a big part of the value of Shout is that 200 HP for yourself, and it's only like 50 HP for your teammates. It's not that much. So you can use it to, an initial use is to save your teammate if that 50 HP is what they need to survive like a Tracer Pulse bomb. Tracer Pulse does like 350 or 375. If they're like a Brig or something and they have that armor, or like a Bastion or something, or a Torb, and you Shout, you could help them live in some cases. or just any sort of burst damage to help them. Start of a 2v1, that's a bit subjective. Sometimes that is okay, but if you're 2 and they're just 1, you may not even need it. But if you think you can secure the kill quickly and snowball further and further, then yeah, but that's also a game-by-game decision. The one you're missing is the start of engagements. Where are you reading that you shouldn't be used to start engagements? There's a lot of nuance to it. Of course you can use it to start an engagement, but I encourage Junkrat Queens to use natural cover as much as possible, because once you commit your shout, it's a very long cooldown. It's like 15 seconds. So this is like where you need to try to get the most value out of it, which is that bulky 200 HP to survive and make sure you can get your Carnage off. Because again, if you pull out your Carnage, the slow axe swing, you can pop it as needed. But I would disagree. I usually use my shout a lot to start engagements, bait a lot of things out. If I don't need it, I won't use it around the corner if I can, get a knife kill and whatnot, but it's usually a go, go, go button. So I'm, again, curious where you read this. And you found that you used it mid-fight. You're using it before you or your enemy dies. So this is a good self-assessment already. You already figured out that using it mid-fight isn't good. So I encourage you to try using it earlier. Using it late is obviously too late. So you kind of process of elimination it yourself here. Mid-fight is bad. Late is obviously bad, so try using it early. Not every early fight, but you kind of pick and choose your battles. Use natural cover as long as possible. Use it to help you get kills and start rolling. Junkrat Queen's a very feast or famine hero, right? With the bleed and everything. Why is DPSing as a support so frowned upon? What? I recently watched GS Raiders complain video, and one of his first points was the awkward fanboys, which basically talked about supports DPSing and how much he hated them. And not only he, I played a lot of games with emphasis on doing damage, just like awkward and many others suggested in their educational unranked GM. Yeah, all I've kind of gathered is flame from my team and people intentionally throwing just for me, putting more emphasis on outputting damage as to pressure the enemy team, which was especially important as KarQ, which leaves me out confused. Why is DPSing as a support so frowned upon? I'm pretty sure healing was dead ever since Overwatch 2 introduction, which Nails put in form of new DPS passive, hence why Mercy was unplayable outside of the cheesy damage boost comps like Soldier and Ashe Mercy. Nowadays, the best support is the one who DPSs and occasionally refills their teams with heals, yet people, for some reason, hate those supports. I find reading these so funny because when you live through all the different metas and eras of Overwatch, you can just see how many people don't know what they're talking about and don't really know, they kind of just read what one community says and not another, and then they kind of just lose sight of what the general consensus is. So not to go too far into this, but you said, you're pretty sure healing was dead since Overwatch 2 introduction, but then I guess you weren't around, or maybe you took a break from the game when there was too much healing and they had to nerf healing. One of the biggest reasons why in season 7 and 8 it was problematic when you comboed all that burst healing from Alari and the Baptiste and the KarQ. They had to nerf all the HPS for a lot of the heroes, and then obviously give more heroes HP in season 9 to kind of offset the relative percentage healing that was available in the game. The heal creep, that was a big topic. Now, to actually answer your question, I wouldn't say it's frowned upon. It's actually correct to be DPSing in the right situations. I think the whole awkward fanboys thing is that he was notorious on this Reddit in the early era of Overwatch 2 about the whole damage concept of supports, which was on the right track, of course, right? I think it was mostly just kind of picking apart the heal botting supports that didn't know how to deal damage and trying to facilitate that part of their gameplay. Because if you heal bot, you're missing out on the other half of the value of your hero, which is taking angles and pressuring with damage from the support role. It's a big part of getting better on that role. But I think people took it too far when they're when awkward says damage, then they only prioritize that, and then they stop healing, period, and just say, well, he said only do damage, but that's incorrect. It's all calculated. It's a better balance, and that's what people should be doing. But then, the people you play in game will kind of lose sight of that and also be thinking that you're an all or nothing person. Even if your numbers show otherwise, they see you doing more damage than your average support that they're used to, and then they died as a consequence of their own actions. Maybe they were out of position or whatever, and then I wouldn't say it's frowned upon, but then you're the scapegoat. It's they saw you on the kill feed, or sorry, they died, then they see your perspective very briefly, right? Because the camera pivots to one of your teammates and they see you DPSing on KarQ, and they're like, oh, I died because my KarQ was busy DPSing and not healing me, and then you get blamed. So it's all about just a nice balance between the two. As long as you're not 10,000 damage, 2,000 healing on KarQ, where you're clearly only DPSing and all your healing is your self-heal passive and Suzu, then you won't be flamed. And you can win games just DPSing, but it will not go very well for your teammates. I would say just strike a better balance and do your best on it. If you could only play 3 heroes for each rank, which ones? If your goal was to play at a reasonably high rank, blah, blah, blah. Is the answer just poke, rush? Okay, I just quickly paraphrase this. I'm just gonna answer this. If I can only play 3 heroes, like if you're a gold or plat, want to be able to carry in diamond or above, for me, for tank right now, being able to play D.Va, Winston, and Ramatra. I would say one of E3 to cover all your metas, actually. D.Va and Winston kind of accomplish the same. In this meta, I think D.Va's a bit more versatile, even though Winston's still great. So I'd say D.Va, Ramatra for Brawl, and Sigma for Poke. For DPS, Tracer, Ashe, Widowmaker. And then for support, I'd choose Ana, Kiriko, because they're big generalist supports that slot anywhere, and probably Juno right now for this meta. There's my 3 for each role. Next, am I crazy for thinking Junkrat is quite overpowered now? Yes. Keep in mind a metal rank console player, in my experience, will be highly different than yours. That being said, ever since season 12 began, I've been losing match after match against Junkrats who run rampant in my games, farming kills. 7 to 8 out of my 10 matches against a Junkrat, no matter which role I play, ends up having them with the highest damage kills, and relatively most of all, least deaths out of anybody in the match. When in tank, it feels kind of ridiculous to swap to a different character just because one guy is giving my team trouble, but I could be very well wrong on this. Actually, this is not wrong at all. A lot of people will switch when one person on the enemy team is carrying. You want to do your best to win the game, and if that's your star player, you just have to address it. Right? If their Junkrat is a problem, you should swap. If Steph Curry is shooting open threes, are you not going to double, triple team him? You got to change your game plan a little bit, you know? Even then, I wouldn't know who to swap to other than Zarya, who's good with dealing with spam damage. D.Va. Zarya can get energy, but like, D.Va can shut down Junkrat completely. A DPS swap is probably the most obvious answer. What's your obvious answer? Probably just something to fly, like Echo Pharah out of Junkrat's effective range and just create distance or keep distance from him. So probably like Ashe as well, or Widowmaker. Junkrat really can't do anything to you. But as a support, I don't know what I can do to nullify an enemy Junkrat's impact on the game. TLDR, I'm sick and tired of enemy Junkrats being server admin ever since season 12. What can I do better? So I answered the tank and the damage for supports. Anything really that can just keep distance. You don't necessarily switch to a support to like counter a Junkrat. You kind of do it to like synergize with your team as better as possible. So anything with distance, like Ana, Kiriko, the usual, and then sniff out his flanks. I think the problem with metal rank console is that they just get killed by random spam from Junkrat. And the biggest thing you can do is look up and not stand still. Standing still, having good, like always be moving around, and Junkrat's value goes down dramatically. But I have spectated a lot of metal rank and in console, and people have very linear movement, or the Ana is just scoped in one spot, never moving, never looking, so Junkrat can just bounce one. They get hit, they don't react. They get hit and they stay scoped in and take one, and then they accidentally take a second one, then they'll probably die, you know what I mean? So keep moving, and no, Junkrat is not overpowered at all right now. Realistically, what can you do against Orisa as Junker Queen, the title? A lot of people say the best thing to do is ignore Orisa, but I feel like that advice has been outdated since season 9, as well as the season 12 buff. She's pretty much a 500-pound BBW that runs like Fat Albert and has an Olympic gold medal and everything spear related. Do I have to play the fun and engaging counter-watch game? You're not wrong. The best advice is to ignore the Orisa as much as you can, but obviously if there's no squishy target in your vicinity, you are supposed to just shoot whatever's closest to you, because obviously if you shoot a shotgun like Queen's across the map, it's not going to do much. You kind of just shoot in front of you the Orisa a little bit, and you jiggle in cover as long as possible, and then you kind of look for knife opportunities for everybody else on the team, on the enemy team. And then if you can do that, the moment you land a thingy and pull them, expect the Orisa to react and start like, you know, coming into you or like trying to throw a spear at you. So I'd throw the jagged blade. If I catch someone, I'll pull them in, I'll shoot them a bit. I probably wouldn't carnage because you're probably gonna get speared out of it. So I just shoot them a bit, bait out the Orisa to come in, shout as needed, go back into cover, wait, and then just go all in again, wait for your second knife because you already pulled the first person and try to get to the knife again. It is not a favorable matchup for Junker Queen when you play against Orisa, but that's probably the best thing you can do. You are not supposed to duel the Orisa up close, especially because she has so much armor, which mitigates so much of your shotgun damage as Queen, and she has the Fortify. She's not your priority unless, you know, she's the last one and she's caught out and your team is helping burst her down. Your goal as Queen is to eliminate all the squishies. You also don't have to fight straight up, depending on the map design. A lot of tank players think they need to like go to the choke and square up with the other tank and clash like this, when a lot of times like You can, like, you know, be here for a moment, you know, get their attention, but then, you know, when you're playing New Queen Street around the middle of like the robot, you know, duck underneath, go underneath here and go underneath a little tube and see if you can get a little cheeky knife on a different angle. Where convenient, right? What to do about a team feeding Zarya's charges? Had a game where my tank started as Ryan but swapped to Orisa when he saw the other team choose Zarya. I'm only in silver, but I know that it's not a good swap. I told him in chat after he kept dying and he finally swapped the hog, but even the Zarya was almost always full charge from it. It wasn't just my tank, but my DPS also kept shooting at her bubbles all game. I tried telling them in the chat, but was ignored, LOL. Then at the end of the game, my tanks blame me for not healing them. Is there anything else I could have done, or was it pointless? Thanks. I mentioned this earlier, but good Zaryas, as you get better, just expect them to always be mid to high energy. It's always going to happen. And if your team is shooting the bubbles, you can just shoot the bubbles with them. Because again, if everybody shoots the bubbles, you pop the bubble, and the Zarya may be out of position, because a lot of Zaryas, again, will bubble themselves and get very aggressive and put themselves in a pretty risky spot, but then they have that safety net of the bubble. And if it always survives the time that they assume it will, they take agency of the game, because they are choosing and picking and choosing their battles. I'm going up because I'm my bubble. Oh, my bubble's down. I'm going to back up. I'm going to go up when it's ready. But if everybody bursts the bubble, like, you don't have to tell your team don't shoot the bubble. If they're already shooting it, shoot it with them, because you can pop the bubble. It's only like 225 HP right now. If it goes down, she's like, oh shit, I'm in the open without natural cover, without a bubble. I have to burn my second bubble, or I get bursted, hooked, whatever, and you get punished. And that's the downside of Zarya. Zarya's weakness is range and not having like a big gap closer. She's a very slow tank. So if you can get her in the open, she will be punished. Last question, as a flanker DPS, what am I supposed to do if I can't push up without being poked out or insane peel with all this D.Va? It's in the title. I feel totally useless, and I'm throwing when they have any sort of peel, because I can never kill anything, and even if I get a cooldown out, it doesn't matter, because I almost always overstay my welcome and get hunted down like I'm some exotic bird in Africa and rich people want to buy my feathers. Okay, so let's say Tracer, flanker DPS. What are you supposed to do if you can't push out without being poked out? So this is a skill issue. This is your pathing. If you're like a Tracer, a Sombra, a Genji, and you are very evidently like pathing and blinking into a spot where they can see you and pressure you as you get into your position, if you take a bit of damage, you force your recall out, or as a Genji, you're forced to dash away. So that's pathing. Figure out a clean, flanky, stealthy path, or an optimal path where you can minimize damage or minimize being seen, and then wait and be an opportunist. Timing is the biggest thing for a flanker DPS. If you go too early as a Tracer, then yes, the D.Va will turn around and peel, and 5 people will look at you. And if your team's not ready to capitalize on the 5-person attention of peel, then you timed it wrong. You weren't doing your job. You can't just die and be like, oh my god, team, where were you? I drew the attention of 5. No, you went too early. Timing. You can wait for the tanks to kind of look at each other. The D.Va's busy and distracted. There's no way that D.Va's going to turn around and peel for you as a Tracer if you waited a little bit more, or you pressured the right person, like somebody in the backline, just tickle their support and then kind of dart away. You do your job correctly if you can draw cooldowns, like you said. You feel like it's useless, but getting a cooldown out is important. It does matter. It does matter as long as it's safe. If you overstay your welcome, that's also another skill issue. You have to kind of assess when to blink out, when to recall, when to get out without overstaying your welcome. Kills are a bonus, but if you can draw the attention of at least 2 as a flanker, that's very, very good. It means the rest of your team is playing a 4v3. The longer you stay alive and draw attention, the better. That's what you're supposed to do. Thank you for listening to my Reddit questions of the week.